All right, we just finished assignment 4 and we submitted it. So now, if we look at our assignments, or if we look at our unit modules, what's after doing vector design? It's our unit 10, our midterm critique. So our midterm critique is when we actually look back at all the work we've created from exercise 1 all the way through to assignment 4. And we pick 3 of them to print out and present to the class. We do this next class. So part of this is a midterm self-assessment. So all this asks you to do, like a question of the day, is to answer these 5 questions. Unlike a question of the day, you don't have to answer with more than 100 words, but you do need to answer each of the 5 questions, right? Just gives me a check-in with you on your progress so far this semester. And you'll get credit for that, just as though it was a question of the day. And then we have our midterm gallery critique. These are online instructions for it. This is for if a student misses next class, how they can still earn credit for the proving ground. But if you read through it without actually doing it, you'll get a sense of what we're doing in person together next class. And we'll be doing it on printouts rather than just images that we post. So with that in mind, what do we do? What we're going to do is look at our master folder for the class and pick 3 projects that we want to see printed at 8 by 10 inches at least 300 pixels per inch. And then we're going to put mats around them and have them up in the classroom as a gallery critique next class. So I'm going to start with assignment 4. It's always good to have some sort of vector in this portfolio because vectors print in a different way than raster files do because they're all kind of digitally filled. So if I wanted to print my color version here of my assignment 4, or if I wanted to print my black version, either one of those would work. You would pick one or the other because we're looking for 3 different projects, not 2 versions of the same project. But let's say I wanted to print my color one. So I would set it up like this. This is already set up in Photoshop. But how do I make it print ready? Well, the first thing is you make sure it looks good on a solid white background at the desired physical size. So I go to my image size and I make sure that it is 8 by 10. That is the size we want all of our midterm critiques to be. It can also be 10 by 8 if it's wider than it is tall. And we want it to be minimum 300 pixels per inch. But as you saw in assignment 4, I tend to do 350 just in case I can make it a little bit bigger and not lose any quality. So once you've checked that, then what you're going to do is say File, Save As. Not as a Photoshop file and not as your usual file, but we're going to put capital PR dash in front of it. That stands for print ready. Print ready files are different than working formats. Print ready formats are archive formats, right? So this is print ready. Photoshop is not an archive format because Photoshop takes tons of memory and can only be opened in Adobe Photoshop or in Photopea, right? So what we're using is an archive format that goes between different image programs called TIFF, T-I-F-F. This is a format that will not lose quality, right? But will save memory. So now we say save. The problem is we need to go through this secondary screen for TIFF, for archive options. And we want it to be LZW. That is a lossless form of compression. It's a beautiful thing, which just takes a little bit longer to save and a little bit longer to open, but it's like origami with your pixel data. It folds it in and then unfolds it, so it takes up a lot less memory than the full-on PSD file, even though it's the same quality and it will never lose that quality. So check LZW, leave all the other defaults on, and then say OK. Then it's going to give you this, and this is important. Including layers will increase the file size. Do you want that? I am going to say OK for that, but that reminds you that TIFF is used for archiving, and archiving is what you print from. And there's really no reason to save layers on an archive. Does that make sense? Because it's finished. If you want to work on it, you go to your Photoshop file, which has all the layers and takes up all the memory. So I say okay, but that reminds me, you know what I need to do before I finish saving this? Check that it says PR here. Check that it's a TIFF there. I do not want you to accidentally overwrite your PSDs, right? So you give them that new name and that new file format. Then you go to Layer, Flatten Image. Discard hidden layers if they're there. And now you'll see what was really visibly textured in a big way now is integrated fully into the image. And so you see how subtle that texture is. And that will be a beautiful print because now it's all flattened. And then you say save. And now it will be our print ready TIFF of one of your projects. And I do them to the desktop so that I can mark them as purple. Now all of these, those belong in my assignment 4 folder. So let me organize that quickly. Organization is going to help you here. So I'm going to take all those PSDs, those AIs, those EPSs, those SVGs. I'm going to put them all into my assignment 4 folder. Okay, now I need to pick the next project. That one was pretty easy, right? Because we already brought the vector at the highest quality into a PSD at that resolution. Let's pick a more difficult project. How about the first proving ground? These were our CreatureScape projects, right? So when I open it up, I want to open up the highest quality file. And for that, it's always going to be the PSD, not the JPEG, not the PNG. JPEG and PNG are online formats, which means they lose data every time you open them, make a change, and save them. But this one, this is the PSD. This is what I can use to output the highest quality. Now this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to open this file. I still have it open, PR Karl assignment 4, but I am going to say edit, fill with white. Why? Well, because this is a new file. You can also just say new file that is 8 by 10 by at least 300, right? This is the pixel format that I'm going to put the highest quality pixels I can for my proving ground on. Now, how do I do that? I do that by the exact same way we did our animation keyframes and brought them from the assets file onto the stage. I go to my top most visible file from my Photoshop layers, and I hold down Option, and then I go to Layer, and I say Merge Visible while holding down Option. Very similar to what we did in PhotoPete. Then I say Command A to select it all, Command C to copy it all, go over to this, Command V and paste it in. And it should be bigger. It will likely be bigger than my 8 by 10 by 300. Then I do Command T, and I don't hold down Shift, but I shrink it to look good at this resolution, at this size. So the reason this is a difficult one is because my file for my proving ground, my CreatureScape, is not already 8 by 10, right? And I don't want to cut off any part of it. I worked hard on this composition. So instead, like a Polaroid picture, I want to float it onto this 8 by 10 panel so that there's white all the way around it. That means when I print it and put it in my mat, there won't be just a white stripe on 2 sides. There'll be white floating all the way around it. Does that make sense? And when in doubt, be a little bit more generous with your white than you think, right? So I might make it look about like that. Also, when you are floating, it's usually good to have a little tiny bit more space at the bottom than at the top. So instead of it being perfectly centered like that, I might just use my arrow and move it up a few clicks. Now, I need to flatten that. Layer, flatten image. And I need to check its image size just to make sure. 8 by 10 by 350, good. Now I need to change its name. So I save as, but I want it as a TIFF, but I want it now as Karl Proving Ground 1. PR at the front of it, right? This will be the second one I print. or I could call it Creaturescape. Save it to the desktop as a TIFF with LZW. It's already flattened. Go to my desktop, mark that one as purple. So where are my purples? So here and here, right? Okay, my third one, what do I want? Let's see. Go back to all my projects. I could even go back to one of my exercises. I really liked my exercise 2, right? But I don't want to use a PNG. I want to go to the PSD to get the highest quality. Now this one is floating, right? So I don't flatten it here. Instead, I go to the topmost visible layer or folder, hold down Option, and say Layer Merge Visible. There it is. And then Command A, Command C, then go to this project, right? And then Command V, paste it in. Command T, float it. If you don't hold down Shift, it shouldn't distort it in such a way that it looks good on that white paper as though the black were the frame. And then I'm just going to make the background edit fill with white. So you can see exactly how it will print because the white will be the white of the paper. Now I need to flatten it, layer flatten. This is a new file. So I give a new name, save as PR for print ready. And then this is Karl Exercise 2. If you want to print your animation, you print your refined storyboard from that refined storyboard PSD. You flatten it, you save it as a TIFF, you trim it. Maybe I'll show you that one if I have time, because that's the only one that's maybe a little different. Right? Now that's 3. Now you have to print a minimum of 3 to meet the proving ground requirements, but you can always print more. But we're only printing at the 8x10 size, and so they need to be at least 300 pixels per inch. I use 350. All right. So my next one, if I wanted a 4th, for me, if I wanted to print animation, I know a lot of you are interested in animation, I might go to assignment 3, and I would go to my PSD of my refined storyboard, this file. And I would flatten it. I'd say layer, actually, I'd do it this way. So I go to my topmost visible layer. I'd say Option, Layer Merge Visible, right? And I would also turn on this background white. I'll show you why that matters. So I'm going to merge it again. Option, Layer, Merge Visible. Select it all. Copy it all. Move it over again. Paste it in. Okay? Shrink it on. And you'll see that its resolution is almost perfect. So if you just line up those sides on an 8x10, even though it will be a little bit different top to bottom, this is how you should print that one. And it will show up really nicely with a weighted bottom, equal sides, and that shows your animation in a print. And then what do? I flatten it, layer, flatten image, and then I say File, Save As. You don't want to overwrite the last one you just did, and then this one is assignment 3. Okay, now you need to know where to put them in our final minutes, because if you can put them in the right place, then I will be able to print them for you. Okay, and then you're going to put them all into a folder within your master folder that you mark as your print ready files. And then what do you do with them? Okay, so now you go to the home page and you go to links. And I'm not going to do that in the YouTube because I don't want to give our login for our sites. In the class Dropbox, you're going to double click on the first folder, Digital Art Class Files, and then you're going to click